former Australian Test team rider, former Glasgow Tiger for a very long time, and one of the greats in my eyes growing up. So Mick Powell, how would you see yourself as we're sitting here today?
Seems like a lifetime ago when it happened. I was over there for 15 years and thought that was forever, but I've been back for 17, 18 now, so I've been back longer than I was over there. Had some good families and friends over there, like through Speedway. Speedway's a lifestyle over there, completely. Like here, it's just mainly a sport. You go out and do what you do, your parents help you along, you get a few sponsors on the way to help you along, but when you go overseas and start over there, it becomes your career. You get paid to do what you do. If you don't win, you don't get paid. So the more money you make, the more money you can spend on your bikes and your lifestyle. If you're not making the money, it can be a cutthroat sort of game too.
How would you describe your upbringing?
Yeah, motorbikes are my lifestyle. My dad used to race sidecars at the Eka and Ipswich and stuff like that, and plus he rode a bit of short circuit. And even his mother used to ride motocross back in the day, so motorbikes has always been in my blood, in my veins. It was a natural thing for me to do. It was always after school was the first thing I did, was ran out and got my motorbike and did 400 laps around the paddock next door and just rode and loved it. And yeah, it became a career. I decided, I got clippings in the paper when I was 11 years old saying I was always going to be a Speedway rider in the UK, and that dream came true.
The bikes that you were riding at the time?
I was one of them little zip starters, but I was only 3 years old and I couldn't touch the ground, so my dad made it into a sidecar so I could at least ride that. My first race bike was a Suzuki 70 sidecar again, and then started on the MR50s and worked my way up through the CR80s, and eventually got onto the YZ125s, and I bought a TZ250 off of Ivor Harm, which was an ex-bike of Tony Rose's, and that sort of got me into the speed side of things and racing short circuit. But on that day, yeah, found out that Ivor had Speedway bikes too, and he offered me a ride on one of them, and that's where it all began. We went down to the Gold Coast for a meet down there, started off in D grade as you do, and I think I won my first races, and first 3 races, and got beaten in the final. But that's where it all began, back at Service Paradise back in 1986.
How old were you when you first come along sort of Tony Rose?
Well, he was working for Ivor, and then I started riding for Ivor, but I knew him from mini bike days and everything, but he was always sort of a bit above me. He was sort of up in the title ranks where I wasn't. I was just an also-ran. And I used to ride out at Tivoli as well for the ACU, and he was part of the Quamba, I think it was, back in the day, Queensland motorcycle clubs. So we never sort of crossed paths too much until we got to the Speedway days. And Tony used to ride for Ivor, and when he finished, I ended up riding Tony's old bike. So. That's how we were sort of one of the first BTRS races.
And now look at the team that Ivor's got. He's brought through so many people now that are stars and former stars, and people that are going to be stars.
Yeah, like Ivor was, he always put up what we needed, sort of thing. Even when I started, he had 2 bikes. He bought a brand new Godden, and I wasn't allowed to ride that Godden until I was capable of riding, until I could show that I was good enough to ride it. So he's got incentive for his riders. If they're showing that they're going to be riding well, he rewards them, and it's very good what Ivor's doing. He's kept the sport basically running in Brisbane. You can't say he hasn't. The amount of riders he's bringing through. Down the last meeting on Sunday, he had 3 riders in the one race, and it's brilliant to see. He doesn't know who to cheer for. So.
He's a good bloke, very down to earth, and he's just a massive, massive fan of Speedway.
That's it. It does run through his blood. He loves it to death. You got the likes of, when Darcy's one of his offsprings. Well, you can't get much better than that. And you got Nick Morris coming through and Ryan Douglas. They've all sort of rode for him at some stage of the game. And you got, yeah, just, I don't know, yeah, the thing, you know, he gives the boys a chance that they wouldn't have if we didn't supply them with a motorbike. You've got some young fellas now that have never seen a Speedway bike before, and they've hopped on and they're doing great. So, yeah, he's definitely knows how to bring them on anyway.
Glad we touched on Ivor because I wasn't very sure about his sort of where he came into the mix with Speedway and that, but he's always been there since I've been involved, and it's very important to even talk about him a little bit because I'm sure he doesn't want recognition, but to even give him the slightest bit will give him a bit more of a perk up, and at the end of the day he'll really get a kick out of it.
Yeah, like I said, he doesn't like the limelight. He just likes to be the bloke in the background that sort of keeps his boys running and everything. Like, I seen him, someone was trying to do an interview with him down there at the last meeting, and he's like, no, nothing to do with me. Although it's sponsored by BRTS, by his company is sponsoring the meeting, but it was nothing to do with him. So that's the way Ivor is. He likes to be out of the limelight. That's for the riders to do that sort of stuff. So.
You say there was clippings in the paper from when you were 11 saying you want to be a UK star, but when did you start realising that you could do that?
I didn't sort of follow it that much, believe it or not, and even when I first went over there I didn't know, I never sort of did a lot of research into it. I didn't know Scotland was joined on to England, I didn't know it was all one country, but I won an Australian title, small track title at for the Kedron Club at Oxley there. And then just not long after that, I went down to Gary Allen's place, another Kiwi rider, and his dad introduced me to some of the pool promoters that were staying at their place at the time. And they sort of offered me a job. They said, do you want to come and ride for us? We'll pay you airfare and buy your bikes and give you somewhere to stay in a vehicle. And I thought that was the best thing I'd ever heard in my life. So I was 3.5 years into an apprenticeship. So I knew I had 6 months to go on my apprenticeship. I wrote to the apprenticeship board. They said they were quite happy with it. I was working for QEC with Queensland Electoral Commission. I wrote to them, they were quite happy with it, as long as I came back to finish my apprenticeship off after the first season. Turns out I came back with 2 broken legs, but it took a lot more than 6 months to finish the rest of that apprenticeship, and I was back over the following season, but I arrived late into the start of the season. But they were still waiting for me to come back, so that was great.
Here is actually my first memory of Mick Powell at the Ekka Speedway in Brisbane. I was only in about grade 1, but I distinctly remember his leathers, his appearance and his riding style.
Steve Schofield. Buckler Werner. Right on the outside, they move up from the 10-yard mark. The Czechoslovakian boy on the outside, that's Václav Werner. He didn't speak much English, rather see his bike do all the talking for him. He's on the outside and hard up against the wood. On the tapes with Kevin Clem. Mick Powell and Phil Crump on the inside. This is going to be a great run.
You actually rode for Australia before you went to the UK and that. What were some of the guys that you were riding alongside at the time?
I seem to be always partnered with Troy Butler, I think, because he was the most dominant person in the team, so they put him with me, which was probably the weakest. But yeah, I was honoured to be in the top 7 at the time. Probably not the top 7 in Australia, but the top 7 they could get at the time. But there's some good riders I rode with. Stephen Davies was up, Mark Carlson, even Alan Rivet. You know, he was one of the good guys back then. The Langdon boys we sort of started off together. Tony sort of went to more heights than me, sort of thing. But yeah, with most meetings it was all the same riders pretty much showed up. But
the Czechoslovakia, close to the tapes, he's let it go. Václav Werner missed the start, did a nice little solo jump, wasn't
riding such tracks though.
Yeah, we were, like back in the day we were racing. The exhibition was obviously the best track to race, with the crowds and everything there. Rode in front of 22,000 people there. Archerfield always had good crowds. We had 2 tracks in Bundaberg, Maryborough, Yandina, Nambour. I love the Nambour track. It was great to race there. Went to Townsville for a few meetings. I was only ever captain of Australia once, and that was in '92. We raced up at Mount Isa. And a bit of a trek getting there, and I travelled around with the opposition. I travelled around with the English touring team, but I was captain for the Australian team. So no one's supposed to know that.
How we tie into this is exactly what happened. So we were down at Brisbane Speedway the other day at a Darcy Ward Club Day, and I didn't realise until you put your Darcy shirt on, it said Powley on the back, and I went, "Are you Mick Powell?" And I felt like the biggest moron in the world, because I immediately went back to me being, grade 1 at the Ekka, and you're in your red leathers, and here I am up the fence getting hammered by shale and all this sort of thing. But I'm 36 and I'm fanboying over you putting the tapes down.
I will let it do to help do our jobs. There's probably an ex-rider that pulled the tapes down when I was racing, so you've just got to chip in and help out. Like I said before, we're one big happy family, and what Darcy's doing now, he's trying to promote the sport, trying to get it back up and going again, so why wouldn't you want to help, sort of thing, you know what I mean? And he's a great kid, he's putting a lot of effort into it. He's put a lot more effort than we are. I'm pulling down the tapes, there's not much of effort, but the amount of effort him and his dad are putting in is going great.
I do want to touch on Darcy. I wasn't planning on talking about him, but we will, because you have to. He's definitely doing big things in Brisbane, and as soon as this COVID thing gets out the way, I think the huge things he has in mind are actually going to come to fruition.
Yeah, he's learning a new life, and one of the things that has changed his life, he's got a motorised wheel on his wheelchair. Now he can go wherever he wants to go, whenever he wants to go there. So now he can be a part of it, and he can get in there and he can do his own thing. He's he wants to help these riders out, so he's not just promoting a meeting, he's helping riders at the same time. He's chatting with people, keeping sponsors entertained. It's a big day for him to go down there. He's not just, he doesn't just organise a meeting and sit back. He's all over the place on that race day that he promotes.
In 1989, at the end of the season, you had quite a big crash and it didn't go so well. But what was the season like leading up to that point?
Yeah, everything was going great. I was learning new tracks, and when you first go overseas, you got to learn how to adapt to these new tracks. You got to virtually learn how to ride again, because the long straights and tight corners, it's completely different to our big round tracks that we have here. So slowly but surely adapting, and things were going good. What tends to happen over there, you start going good on your home track because you're riding it every week, and the away tracks you only ride once or twice a year, so you struggle a bit on them. So I was getting my away average up a little bit, and yeah, things were going pretty good.
Like for the Aussies when you at that time when you went overseas? Was everyone sort of happy to see another Aussie accent getting around?
Well, there was quite a lot of Aussies over there and Kiwis at the time, because the Scandinavians, the year '89 when I went over, that was the first year they were allowed to race in the National League. So they were in the British League but not in the National League. So every track you went to, there was at least 3 or 4 or 10 Aussies that you'd meet up with every track you went to. So yeah, we all got to know each other and we all looked after each other. Like I stated again, and I'll say it again, we're all one big happy family over there. So yeah.
So at the end of that season comes, you've had big injuries. What happened? Did you jet back to Australia, or what was the procedure?
Yeah, I came back with 2 broken legs. I broke my left thigh and my right ankle, and hobbled back. I had to come back and finish my apprenticeship off. And when I went back the following year, I just couldn't get out of my head. I went from an 8-point average down to a 3-point average. So no matter what I tried different motors, and like I said, if you're not making money, if you're not making points, you're not making money. So I had no money to spend on my bikes in the end, and luckily Glasgow picked me up and said they'd buy me bikes and a van and somewhere to live, and got me back going again, and a little bit of help from Shane Bose and a couple of the other boys that were up in Glasgow at the time, and yeah, got my head sorted out, got me back scoring points again.
Well, he did kick off in a big way for Glasgow, and they had a really good set of seasons, and I think it was 93 and 94 they won back-to-back seasons, and it's been said that you're a massive role in that.
Yeah, I joined them in 91, and we were runners-up in 91 and runners-up in 92, and the only way we could do better was to win it, so we won it in 93, and that was the first time in 70 odd years that Glasgow had won it. It was a great thing. We got invited to the mayor's luncheon. We got the best team in Glasgow, which meant we beat Celtic and Rangers, so that was an honour as well. And the best thing we could do after that was go and win it back to back, so we did it the following year too. It wasn't just the league, we won the Knockout Cup, we won the Scottish Cup, we won the Interleague Cup, everything we went in we won that year, so it was great.
And who were some of the teammates on the team those years that you distinctly remember?
Well, like I said, Shane Bose, so we're still great mates now. We still talk to each other every day, or most days. Robbie Nudge, he was Hungarian. David Walsh, he was from Yorkshire. Nigel Crabtree. James Greaves, he was at Monks, he was a junior at the time, but very much contributed. Jesper Olsen, he's one of the Danish riders that come over. I don't think we won it with Duki Emalenko, Charlie Emalenko. I think he joined the year after. But there was Stuart McDonald, a couple of local Scottish boys were in the team. That was great to have. Yeah, I think we had 3 Scotsmen in the team at the time. So.
There was a test match, I think it was in 91 or 92 at the Echo. It was Australia versus England. You were on the Australian team. Again, I think it was Troy Butler. I think it was Pop Rivet as well. I don't know the rest, but I remember it was Paul Thorpe was the captain of the Poms at the time. And I remember in one of your, I think it was your first heat, you were absolutely hosing everyone. You went around the outside and then the bike let go. What actually happened? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was one of my greatest races I've ever finished. I think you can talk about, there was an individual meeting there too against all the Poms, and I went around Steve Schofield, I went around Phil Crump, and this bike was going the fastest it's ever gone, and the chain came off. A simple little $20 chain came off, so that ruined that. And I managed to beat the great Simon Wigg that night too. That was another notch in my belt. Like, you know, I probably don't want to beat Wiggy because he's my hero too. They always say don't race against your hero or don't meet your hero. He was always my hero, Wiggy, but I managed to beat him once, so that was a great honour. But yeah, that Australia versus the Poms there, and I think we started off pretty slow, but I think we came back and pretty much beat them in the end. Mark Carlson was in that meeting too, Stan Bear. Yeah, I think Phil Crump was one of the other riders there too. So.
It's funny too, we talk about Brisbane, like the Darcy Ward meetings and that, because you see Phil Crump getting around now, and blokes like Mike Farrell and, you know, Ron Johnson gets around and a few others, but it's interesting that after all these years, it still hasn't gone away from them.
No, that's it. I don't know. Yeah, they just love it to death. They have to keep showing up there. You know, they've been to the top. They've seen the creme de la creme, and you can't get any better than where they've been. And they still show up at our local meetings down here just to watch the boys and inspire the boys. You know, he still inspires me when I see Phil Crump every day. He's been my hero my whole life. So.
What was it like to try and make a professional living out of it? Was it really stressful, or was it sort of, it come together okay?
Injuries had a lot to do with it. Depends how many injuries you picked up during the year. If you scored a lot of points for that year, a couple of years I stayed over there and did a Scottish winter. Went to Spain for a holiday and stuff like that, and just got fit and ready for the next season. At the times, I had a bad year, so I had to go and I was a concrete and labourer or bricky labourer over the winter in Scotland, and that's hard yakka. But I didn't have to do any exercise that year, so I was fully fit from carrying bricks all the time. But it depends on how that season went that determined what I did over the break. I used to come home as much as I could. Come home and stay with Mum and Dad most of the time. So.
But you started off your career very young and going overseas very young. So what were some of the, let's say the mid-90s, what were some of the things you found that was so far different to Australia or to what you knew when you were over in Scotland at the time?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the country pretty much, so everything was brand new to me. I hadn't really been to Brisbane a couple of times in my life. That was about it. And when I first got to Scotland, and you got the massive, Edinburgh, Glasgow, the towns are just hundreds of thousands of years old. It's phenomenal. Australia was only 200 years old at the time when I went over there, and to see the history and all that it's unbelievable. Some of the food and that's all. Everything's slightly different, and I never eat a curry before I went over there. I had to learn how to do that. I had practice me drinking because they say we drink. Jesus, the Scottish drink a lot. But different way of life when you're racing motorbikes for a living. We'd ride and you'd get home from the meeting at 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning. You'd sleep through to lunchtime, get up, wash your bike, and have to go and do it again. When we went on tours, you'd get down, because we're in north of the country, up in Glasgow. We went down to race down south. We'd go down and do 3 or 4 meetings at a time. So you'd race, go and stay in a hotel, move to the next track, race, stay in the hotel, move to the next track, and so it was rock and roll, living out of a suitcase.
How did you keep your leathers clean and things like that?
Getting them dry was the problem. Cleaning was an issue, but the Scottish weather can be pretty bleak sometimes. It just rains and rains and rains. And it was a mate of mine, Peter Carr, said to me over there one day, he said, if you wait for the rain to stop, you'll never wash your bike and you'll never wash your leathers. So just get out there and do it in the rain. That's what you had to do. You had to get your clothes on and get out there and wash your bike in the rain and prepare everything ready to go, and just you sort of blanked the rain, because you had to. Otherwise you get nothing done. And the amount of times we raced in torrential rain in Glasgow because we just had to do it. Otherwise the season was coming to an end. It was getting colder and wetter and colder and wetter, and we had to race. And I've seen some meetings here with a bit of water on the track, and they've called them off. I've raced on rivers.
How cold have you ever been in your life, and how cold has that been on a speedway bike? Like, have you been as cold as you've ever been in your life, and has it been while racing or doing something else?
No, when I first went over, I went for a couple of trial meetings trying to find clubs to ride for, and I went to a small town called Berwick, and I remember riding up the track, and the only thing I could think was how cold my fingers were, and I was getting less and less grip on the handlebars because my fingers were just getting more and more frozen, and I came in and I had white finger on every finger. But the coldest I've ever been was, I had a friend who used to ring me, I kept saying it was cold, he said, no, it's not cold, it's not cold. And it was in Glasgow one year was minus 19.6. I went out and hopped in my car to drive to work. I went to wind down the window and the window stayed up because it was frozen. So I was driving along the motorway doing 70 mile an hour and all of a sudden the window unfroze and fell down and fell off the rails. So it was 70 mile an hour with the window down at minus 19.6. That was cold.
You started out in an era where bikes had upright motors. Did you progress towards the lay-down style bikes?
Yes, the year it happened, I started working for a Scottish rider over there, Kenny McKenna, and we had about 35 riders we were looking after at the time, and everyone decided they wanted lay-down engines, so I was converting uprights to lay-downs. There was a bit of a knack to it at the time, and we sort of learnt the knack, a bit of help from some other riders in it, and yeah, we got going with converting engines from uprights down to laydowns until they eventually started producing the laydowns themselves straight from GM factory.
So Mick, do you want to tell us about what this plaque is here?
Once a year they used to the British Riders Championship, and they also had a British Pairs Championship, so the top two riders out of every team in the league. Me and Carl Stoney were for Workington, and we managed to win it that year. It was in the pouring rain, but we did what we had to do and we won the meeting. Yeah.
And we'll keep going along the bench. So what's this thing here? What's all that about?
But I was one of the last to convert because I was too busy working on everyone else's bike to work on my own. So, but yeah, that was, well, revolution. That was the problem wasn't with the engines. The problem was with the carburation, trying to get a carburetor to work on them in that position. But once they eventually sorted that out, that's when I sort of committed and got on the laydowns. They're a different bike to ride. Everything happens in slow motion compared to an upright. So if you get around the corner and you hit a hole, it slowly comes up. Compared to an upright, you'd be on your back before you knew it. So a lot more advantage that way, a lot easier to ride because a lot lower centre of gravity. And but yeah, I think things have changed ever since I've finished as well. They see them nowadays and they're just revving on the stop. They're running on slick tracks. They can't seem to handle the dirt. But yeah, I would like to have a ride on a new bike one day to see what the difference is. But I don't know if my head or my brains or my bones could handle it.
You're very handy on the tools, so you did your trade as a fitter and turner, I imagine, and how did that convert to bikes? Is it being poor and needing to work on your own stuff, or you just had the brain to want to do that?
Well, fitter and turner basically blueprints whatever he's working on, a pump, a motor, a gearbox. It just makes it work, makes sure the bearings are right, and so that's what I was doing with the Speedway engine. So I wasn't tuning them as such, I was just making sure they're all right, making sure they're serviced and running properly. We got a few tips from Billy Hamill and from his mechanic, Craig Cummins, just get a fair bit of information from him on what they were trying. So I'd pass that on to some of the riders, and it was more a case of listening to the riders too, to see what they wanted. Do they want to go faster? Do they want to get out of the gate quicker? So we tried different scenarios to see who liked what. Different riders like different engines and different setups.
Hey, what's this thing here? What's all that about?
That's what they're called program boards over there. Supporters that go to every meeting, they have their own program boards. So yeah, it was on enough that someone did a painting of me when I first went over there. You can tell when I first went over because I got the mullet hanging out the back.
I noticed you had a bit of a wild hairstyle in one of the videos I saw. It was like a blonde sort of mullet at one point there, like a streak or something like that.
Yeah, I've had a bit of everything in my days. Had beads in my hair, I've had a white mohawk and black sides. You know, who cares? It's only hair.
Yeah, no, to grow back. But here's my favourite, just because this is what I remember growing up as a little boy, seeing these leathers. And why red? Why was red your colour?
I don't know, I think it was my dad's colour as well. Everyone else had blue, and I was never really a blue person, I was rather red. So yeah, I think it was my dad's favourite colour too, so red became my ultimate.
So when you were saying that, you know, someone wants to gate faster and all that, what would typically be something that you would change or do to make that happen better?
Lower gearing. By lower gearing or shortening your wheelbase up, makes you get out the start a lot quicker, but then it's very uncomfortable to ride like that in that position. So you can be first one out of the start, but there's always a chance someone's got their bike set up to go fast around the outside, and they'll just come around you. So there's sacrifices there, but
Red everything, it was awesome. And we'll go through some of these bibs here. So this one here, the Belmont Monarchs, what was that all about?
that was my very first season over there. That's 1989, that one. First year I got there, and it's still in probably the best condition, so you can tell the different quality of the race jackets through the years.
You can tell the era too by the flake material. I love it. I wish I had a car with this as the interior. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'll go across to here.
There's quite a few Glasgow ones. That one's just picked out of nowhere. I think we won the league that year. That was in 2004.
Yep.
Moving on to, this is 2000. 2001 at Workington, but I only lasted till I think it was June that year, so I only made 3 months, and I crashed and broke my pelvis and my ribs and my shoulder and my wrist and my ankle and bruised my lungs and my kidneys, so that was a bad one.
Jesus Christ. And when you were in your career, were the tracks predominantly more heavier style tracks, or were they slick, or was there a mixture of both?
Very much a mixture of both, yeah. A lot of the southern tracks had a lot more dirt on them because they had the sun and the water. They could artificially water them and keep them going, whereas up north of the UK, they used to get a fair bit of rain there, so they're forever trying to get the water off the track, and by that end up with a hard base, believe it or not, because if they didn't have a hard base, they couldn't have run the meeting at all.
And when riding these bikes, there would have had to have been times in your career where you've gotten on a bike, you've racing around a track, and then all of a sudden you've gone, wow, this is miles too fast. Can you remember a point in time, or the one that stands out like that?
No, I remember we had there was a meeting for all the Speedway Riders Association and the big SPA, which is British Speedway Promoters Association, all got together and said, right, we need to slow the sport down. Too many people are getting hurt. And I think there was not one single rider there that wanted to go slower. I don't think I've ever met a rider that wants to go slower. They're talking about making their engines 350s rather than 500s, and retarding the ignition and rev limiters and all that sort of stuff to make the bikes go slower. Not one single rider agreed to that. So the best thing they come up with, and you know, the riders want to go faster, the engine tuners want to go faster, but the only thing the promoters could come up with was the air fence. So now it's mandatory in a lot of tracks now, and it has saved a lot of people's lives, I believe. But I don't think you can go and talk to any rider that wants to go slower. Everyone wants to go faster.
So with the bikes that you've had over the years and that, what was your manufacturer of choice?
I went with GMs. When I first started off, I was a Godden rider and swore I'd never ride GMs, but I think it was Shane Bose that convinced me. When I went and joined the Glasgow team, I went from Godden to GMs, and it sort of changed my life a fair bit, so I stuck with them for most of my career. I think nowadays, believe it or not, there's about 10 or 12 different manufacturers out there at the moment, but they can't sell their engines because the world champions ride a GM, so is everyone down the line going to ride a GM. So.
some of the weird doors that Racing Speedway over there has opened to you? Like, have you, you know, met celebrities or gone to cool places? What sort of some of the follow-on from that?
Not me as such. Like I said, I'm getting invited to the mayor's luncheon. That's very honourable. You know, our name is written in the town hall now for being like, you know, the best Glasgow team of the year. That's very honourable. We've got what do you call it, Hall of Fame in Glasgow now for the Speedway, so we're up in the Hall of Fame. As far as celebrities, no, not a great deal. Not up in Glasgow anyway. Look, if you went down south, you'd see like Troy Corser and Troy Bayless showing up to some of the meetings to watch down there. Or, yeah, Glasgow's just a little bit too far away for people travelling up there.
Yeah, this is some good team riding here. You've got Grant McDonald out there, you've got Junior Ryan, Mick Powell. Mick Powell knows that you can go just as quick as he, but Mick Powell's covering that inside. Mick knows that he's going to get the bonus point here. It's a really contrived ride from him, and he's going very, very well. It looks like Glasgow's...
In another video I saw, you were running in, you weren't running Kevlars, you were running like Wolf motocross gear or something like that. How come that come about?
When I moved to Workington, I was approached by Bill Brown, who's a Wolf Sport manufacturer, and he lives in Workington, and asked me would I try him out, because he was just trying to get it off the ground at the time. And he'd made a Speedway version. He'd already been making motocross clothing, but hadn't done Speedway. So the only difference is the pants go over your boots rather than inside. So yeah, he created it, got all my sponsors printed on the side of them and everything, and then that was it. It was sort of a bit of a revolution, that, and then there's quite a few of them running them now. You run a full protective suit underneath, and just with the Wolf Sport clothing on the outside.
There's been some things over, you know, the last 40 years or 30 years in Brisbane in particular with Speedway that have kind of been weird but really cool. And one of them was, there's been a few where they've run indoor meetings at Boondall Entertainment Centre. Did you ever get involved in that?
No, I didn't. I was a bit young at the time. I was only 16 or 17 when that happened. I did do some ice meetings when I was in the UK. They go to an ice skating ring and basically run a normal Speedway bike, and they get self-tappers, and they screw them from the inside out, from the inside of the tyre out. You put an extra layer of tube in there, and away you go. And I remember getting to the first meeting, and I was racing with Hans Nielsen. I was paired with Hans Nielsen for England versus the rest of the world. I said, what time's practice? There's no practice. Away you go. So I went out for my first race, made a blinding start and got to the first corner and just kept doing 360s across the ice. So that was my first experience. But we did well, and I think we won the meeting, and I ended up having a good couple of 5-1s with Hans Nielsen. So yeah. That was my everything, going there to race short circuit out of Tivoli. And Timmy Ray was one of the guns out there, but he always rode 250s against the 500s, and he was well and truly up there with them and beating them sometimes. So he was another one of my heroes' bikes, and my dad ended up picking the frame up. He did have a couple of bikes, it's not the original, but it was one of his spare ones. So.
And like you were saying, it starts off as a solo diamond and then changes from there, like it's got a shocked rear end.
Yeah, the difference between a Speedway bike and a short circuit bike is it's got the sprung back end, so it can handle a lot rougher tracks. And it's got a swinging footrest, so it can go through right-hand corners. So when you go through the right-hand corner, that footrest swings up out of the way. Whereas on a Speedway bike, they're rigid and don't do that.
Oh, and the other thing, to state the obvious, is they've got brakes.
Yeah, they don't have to work. Well, they do have to work to get through scrutineering, but you don't use them when you're racing.
No.
Such. There's more as the reason why Speedway bikes slide is to slow down, and these are the same thing. Yeah.
What's one of the embarrassing stories that stands out for you about racing Speedway overseas? Yeah, I'll have to tell that story again. So, went to a Knockout Cup final once. That was in '93,
and we were odds-on favourite to win. No, we weren't odds-on favourite to win it. Actually, Arena Essex, we only beat them by 2 points. So we went down there, and Arena Essex was beating everybody. So we went down there for the meeting. I've got down there with me new girlfriend at the time, became my wife, and Shane Bose showed up and said, "Oh, have you got my bike with you?" "No, I haven't got it. I think Jason's bringing it." "Okay." Said to wait till 8:30. Jason Lyons shows up. "You got my bike with you?" "No, I haven't got it either." So yeah, the actual truth was we had to ring up the supporters bus, and they went round 6 o'clock in the morning. Had to break into the house to get the key, to break into the shed, to get my bike, and they put it underneath the bus, and they drove my bike down in the supporters bus down to the meeting, and I got it out and did all right, not too bad. We won the meet. We only lost by 2 points as well, so it was a complete draw. They had to rerun the whole 2 meetings again.
And while we're on the topic too, so this is the shirt we didn't get the best footage of before, so just turn around. That's that Staunch As Racing, and who come up with that?
That was George Ward and a few of the boys from Ipswich. Tony Rose was in it. A couple of other fellas there to do a lot of engine tuning and that for George. So yeah, we all got together and created a racing team pretty much, and
Awesome.
we all hang out together and just a bit of fun. That's all. So
Yeah.
we all got our numbers on our sleeve.
Oh, I like it. Nice.
Make it more professional.
And while we're touching on George and Darcy and all that, here's one of Darcy's bibs from the Invitational.
Yeah.
Cool bit of kit.
Yeah, we were all gifted one of them just for helping him out for the day. So
Yeah.
he got one of them made for everyone that helped out for the day. So
Yeah, it's a good thing. Like I said, he's doing great things. Has been your biggest disappointment, as in you're going great, everything's on your side, and then it fell over at the last minute or it was snatched out from underneath you?
yeah, I've got a bit of a classic. Went to Norway for the under-21 World semi-finals, and I was there by myself, no mechanic. I got seasick on the ferry on the way over there. Got to the meeting, and I'd scored, I think I had 5 points going into the last race. Not quite enough to qualify. I didn't believe anyway, I didn't think I had enough to qualify. So Ollie Olsen came up to me and said, "Mick, my son is in this race. If you can help him out, I'd be honoured." So fair enough. So I went out and I was in front, but I had Henrik Gustafsson behind me and Lars Gunnestad, a couple of local favourites. Both of them passed me, so the other one behind me was Jacob Olsen. So I tried to make it not so obvious. I drifted a little bit wide, let him come up the inside, and he got the point and qualified for the runoff. And then Carl Blomfeld came over to me and said, "Mick, what are you doing?" I said, he needed the point, I didn't. He said, "He's on the same points as you. He just qualified for the world final and you haven't." So I missed out in the world final by letting someone else pass me.
Was your testimonial?
Yeah, we sent all these over to my dad. There's programs in there. There's the #1 tickets. Like we sold tickets before the event, and me over the years in different styles. But that was actual advertisement that we used for the meeting. It was on the 3rd attempt we got to run it. The first attempt we tried to run it, there was a fuel strike in the whole country. So no one could get to the track, so we had to cancel the meeting. Second time, that was the one that's on YouTube already, that was called off due to rain. And third time we eventually got to run it, and it was a success.
Oh, it's all right, mate. Sometimes we get the words out eventually, but no, you're dead right. That's awesome. And look at some of the names on there, like Joe Screen, Craig Boyce, Peter Carr, Ray Morton. Like, there's some good names on there. Paul Thorpe, like we said before.
Yeah, same target, yeah.
Peter Carlson. Yeah, there's some big names. When it did come time for you to start hanging up your boots, riding full time and that sort of thing, how did you suppress the urge to ride? Was it a case of your son being born?
Yeah, My second wife was English. She was one of my sponsors, and that's the mother of Harry, sort of thing, my son. And she used to reiterate to me that if I crashed, I wouldn't be able to pick up my son. And when you go to the start line and start thinking about these things, you can't win races. So I lost the mindset. I was going out there thinking if I did crash, I wouldn't be able to hold my son, and all this thing going through your head. I just didn't have the heart to keep racing anymore. So I bowed out, not the way I wanted to, but I had to leave when I left. Yeah.
In your time or in your career, who was really special to you that you really couldn't have done what you've done without them?
Well, obviously, like your parents, to start you off and everything, they got me to the position, and then where I met up with Ivor and that, Ivor kept me going for a couple of years there. He got me stepped up into, so I was good enough to go to the UK. And yeah, I can't go past Shane Bose. He helped me out quite a lot, even as far as doing engines and stuff like that. We used to always stop in his place and do a quick engine on the way to a meeting. A quick roadside rebuild, we used to call it, and get us back going again. But yeah, my mechanic, Craig Swan, young fella, not many people would have heard of him, but he was with me for 11 years over there. He was still going to school when he started with me, so he used to skip school just to come to the Speedway with me. And he finally got a job as a reporter, so he used to report on the soccer games. So I bought him a TV so he could watch the TV on the way to the soccer game, so he could, on the way to the Speedway meeting, so he could report on it. But yeah, I couldn't nail it down to one person. Like Shane Bose is probably well in there, but yeah, just like I said, I'll go back to it again with one big happy family.
You did something that a lot of people want to do in their lifetime, especially racing Speedway, and they can't. So surely that's not lost on you that you've had a successful career at the level that you knew you could race at.
Yeah, sometimes a bit complacent with it, but yeah, when you do any sport for a living for 15 years, like yeah, I'm quite happy with my career, with what I did. Could have went a little bit further. So I gave up my world championship hopes about 3 or 4 years in, and just made a job and a career out of it. But yeah, to get paid to go and ride a motorbike, that was just my dream. When I first went over there, and the crowds, that came down, people were slipping money in your pocket, and people wanting autographs and photographs, stuff that doesn't really happen too much in Australia. But to see thousands of people over there just cheering you on, wanting you to win, it's a lifestyle that, yeah, I'm grateful I had.
Like I said, thanks again for doing this.
No worries, anytime at all, yeah. If it can increase, like, if this helps to sell Speedway, I'll do it every day.
Righto, mate. Thanks, eh?
Cheers, thank you.